So we made it this far, huh? I really have to talk about this now. How Guts and Casca escape unharmed and lived happily ever after, and nothing bad happens in the story ever again? How the eclipse was all a dream and Guts and Casca are still lying together under the tree? That's what happened, right? Analysis series over. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Man, wow, what a trip this was. Well, if I'm really going to talk about this, we need to address a few things first. Let's pull back and look at Berserk from a distance for a moment.
Let's slow it down. Let's slow it way down.
So, shock value. You know what this is, right? Its literal definition is this. Shock value is the potential of an image, text, action, or other form of communication, such as public execution, to provoke a reaction of sharp disgust, shock, anger, fear, or similar negative emotion. From an outside perspective, it may look like that's what Berserk is as a whole. Intense violence, sex, blood, demons, and themes dealing with trauma, gender, religion, and inevitable fate. What is Berserk, if not something to shock you time and time again, with how it's not afraid to go there? The world of Berserk is immediately shown to be harsh, cruel, and unforgiving. We follow characters who constantly kill and see death all around them. We are shown vivid depictions of hell and demonic creatures. We are given the smallest thread of hope during all of this. So what gravitates someone to a story like this? Are all fans of Berserk just fucked up people that like seeing the most depraved things the world has to offer? I think it goes further than just being shock value for the sake of it, but hang on a moment. See, when it comes to fiction or literature at all, no topics should be off limits, in my humble opinion, but I believe this to be the truth. To do so would be limiting the freedoms of human beings, and any attempt to censor what people should and can write about, I find fundamentally wrong. Here in the modern world, there are some topics that are just so taboo that they are practically cut off from any media that will actually get attention. Television is censored. Movies need to be sold to mass audiences and have restrictions based on where it will be playing and how much of a wide release it will get. So, for example, if your movie is rated NC-17, it gets no promotion from the studio. Not to mention that a lot of modern films, though I don't think they push an agenda per se, they certainly seem to have a criteria they need to hit in order to appeal to the masses. You're not going to see anything that Berserk tackles featured in a DC, Marvel, or Star Wars film. And some films do tend to still get away with a lot. They get away with quite a bit. But why does Berserk cover so many different harsh and controversial topics? Violence, relationships, religion, patriarchy, and the biggest one we're about to discuss, sexual assault. What is the point of having shocking thing after shocking thing? Is it purely for the shock itself? To just make their audience react for no other purpose? To say that they went there? Well, I think that the mere fact that almost none of these topics can be fleshed out in most mainstream media is precisely why Berserk is so fascinating. The story is not afraid to tackle any of these subjects, but even more than that, each one is rooted in reason and dissected through brilliantly written characters that we can have rational thoughts and discussions about horrible things. We are about to talk about sexual assault, of which Berserk has plenty of, but every major moment of it has a purpose in the story that fundamentally changed the characters involved. And it is through the characters that I think makes so-called shock value more than just that. And it is an outlet to delve into subjects that most would dare not, and that you aren't going to see in the mainstream. Let's go back in the story a bit to the first case of sexual assault. Guts as a child being raped by Donovan. This is a key defining moment for his character that will influence everything he does for the rest of his life. First of all, let's not neglect the fact that rape like this probably did happen all the time back in medieval times in real life. Children getting taken advantage of was probably even easier back then than it is now, and it's still a topic that needs to be discussed because it still happens way too frequently. But as far as the story of Berserk, this affected everything about Guts, from his phobia of being touched, to his fear of letting out his emotions, to his first discovery of betrayal from somebody that he loved, with Gambino. He spends the next decade or so of his life slowly overcoming this trauma, and it's not until the sex scene with Casca that he finally lets it all out in a beautiful depiction of vulnerability. As I mentioned when I covered that chapter, it's part of the reason why I love it so much, and I think it's one of the best sex scenes ever done in fiction. And when have you ever seen this? You have your strong, muscle-bound, masculine protagonist breaking down into tears during sex because of trauma. It's not sexy or smooth. It's brutal and honest. And in the first time ever in his life, he explains what happened to Casca. Our next major character dealing with sexual assault was the attempted rape of Casca when she was young. The nobleman that bought her really only planned to use her, and it is here that she met Griffith for the first time. He threw her a sword, and from that first stab, she developed an unhealthy, obsessive bond with Griffith, seeing him as a savior. And this, like Guts, influenced her entire life moving forward. Her suppression of her feminine side to try to prove what a good soldier she was. Her desperation to be Griffith's sword, but as every step she took towards that actually pushed her away, as we know Griffith only respects those who have their own dreams and purposes that go beyond his own. Casca was hiding figurative wounds her entire time with the Band of the Hawk, and it is only when her relationship with Guts begins to bloom that she let go and decide to be vulnerable. With that vulnerability, both her and Guts find solace in the release of their trauma and grow comfortable together, as shown in the final image of Volume 9. So why the shock value of rape? Well, it's not just shock value when you explore it as deeply as this, when it is the driving force behind your characters, and when you build a story to have them confront it in a beautiful and compelling way. And this idea is the entire driving force behind Berserk to me. To me, Berserk is about constantly struggling and fighting back in the face of the intensity of the cruel world that we live in, finding the beauty within the horror, because the world is harsh and cruel and unrelenting. Horrible things are happening even to this day, and it's inescapable. Good people die, evil people get positions of power, people are incarcerated for nothing, bad people go free because of technicalities, and almost everyone has a hidden agenda. Berserk stuffs you in a world not much unlike our own. The only difference is, it has the benefits of being in the fantasy genre. So what seems over the top and of shock value may only be a fictionalized version of what happens around us all the time. And these things need to be expressed and discussed. You can't do that in the mainstream because it ruffles too many feathers of the people that want to put their head in the sand and ignore it, but you can do it in a niche piece of art like Berserk, and I'm perfectly okay with this story never becoming that popular because honestly, it's just simply not for everyone. And not everyone can handle exploring these topics, and that's okay. So now, let's get back into the story where we were. So the 4 Godhand members are named for the first time: Conrad, Ubik, Slan, Void, and now the 5th is being born. Formerly the man named Griffith, now granted with the name Femto. The word Femto is a mathematical prefix for 1 out of 1 trillion, billion, quadrillion, I don't know, a really big fucking number, who knows. Griffith's helmet he was wearing looks as though it just became part of his new actual body. Dark, with raven black wings, just as Void stated that he would have. He flies off of the God Hand and lands in front of Guts, whose arm is still trapped in the mouth of an apostle. Griffith's eyes stay locked on Guts, who is unsure of what to make of this development. But then, Griffith's arm is outstretched, and the other demons lower Casca's naked body to him. And here's why I started the video the way I did. So in case you weren't aware, I don't show the manga pages with nudity because YouTube rules would probably take the video down, and so I only show certain images as I'm talking. And what happens next is a lot of nudity. So I'll just show some of Guts' reactions while I talk, and we'll get into this. So shock value, right? What happens next is simple enough to explain. Griffith begins to rape Casca in front of Guts. Guts is trapped by his arm and can't get to her. Casca comes into consciousness just as Griffith begins his assault. Now, to explain this horrible situation that we're in, let's look at it from each character's perspective. We'll start with Griffith. The meme, Griffith did nothing wrong, is a popular one, and maybe up until this point, I could see your point of view as discussed in the last 2 videos, but right here, With the rape of Casca, you lost me. Griffith sacrificed the Band of the Hawk to have the ability to fulfill his dream of having power and get his own kingdom. Okay, I get it. But the question is, why does he do this? In his very first act of being a god hand, he does this of all things. Well, I think there are 3 distinct reasons why. Reason number 1. Griffith blames Guts for losing his dream to begin with, and by raping Casca, he is spiting Guts and getting some sort of vengeance. And not just vengeance in the moment, but the kind of vengeance that will last forever. This is not something that is over and done. The visual of seeing the woman he loves get raped by his friend is going to be burned into his brain and remembered forever. It is everlasting suffering. See, because Griffith was such a proactive person, he never accounted for having actual feelings for someone. Griffith thought so highly of Guts, and not only that, but Guts went against everything Griffith would normally respect in a person. Guts had no dream of his own, and yet was equal to Griffith. And winning their second fight, perhaps Guts was even better. Guts drove Griffith to act out of emotion for the first time in his life, and it cost him his entire life. It cost him his status, his soldiers, and the use of his body. Griffith couldn't stand the fact that Guts would leave him, and now part of his rape of Casca is just to show Guts that he is the one in power, and that he hates Guts for leaving him. So, as with most sex acts, it is a massive display of power over a person. Reason number 2. Griffith is taking back possession of Casca. Griffith never wanted Casca romantically, but he was not an oblivious fool. He knew Casca wanted to be more to him, and he used that to his advantage. Just as Griffith used everyone to his advantage, Princess Charlotte being another example. Griffith knew he had Casca under his thumb, and if he asked her to jump through fire for him, she would do it. But upon being rescued, Griffith noticed something. He saw that Casca and Guts had become very close. Starting in the sewers under Midland, or outside the carriage after the fight with Wilde, Griffith saw that Casca had now begun to fall for the man that he blamed for everything. Casca, the one person Griffith knew he had at all times, was now slipping away from him to another man. The man Griffith himself had also loved. So raping Casca here is another display of taking back what one believes to have belonged to him all along. It's a child saying that, no, you're not allowed to play with my toys. This is my toy. And reason number 3, which is mostly a theory, and look, I don't like to jump ahead when I do these videos. I like to keep everything on track to where the story is currently, spoiling the hell out of everything that's happening, but not spoiling anything that's happening in the future of the story. So I'm basically doing the analysis based on context of what's happening in the story, but not what will happen. I'm trying not to let that influence my analysis as I go through it piece by piece. But to explain this third point, I'll have to jump ahead a little bit. So if you don't want to know, skip ahead about 1 minute. I'll try to get this out quick. So when Guts and Casca had sex, she was in fact impregnated. Neither of them know it yet, but that is the case. Griffith's rape here actually corrupts the fetus inside of her, turning it into a demon creature itself, and that creature plays a pivotal role in Griffith's resurrection back on Earth. So this rape could have also been Griffith knowing this fact ahead of time, because who knows what kind of knowledge he's gotten as a God Hand member to know things that could happen or know things he needs to do to make things happen, and he's using her for this purpose as well. Again, that's just a theory I have because I have not finished the series yet. I'm still reading it. I'm reading through it, but I have finished the conviction arc and everything, so that's where I'm at with that. It's a theory of my third reason why Griffith did this. Okay, so we covered the 3 reasons why I believe that Griffith does this. But now, let's look at this through Casca's perspective. As I stated before, the catalyst for her entire drive in life was started by Griffith saving her from sexual assault. She thought of Griffith as a god, and now as Griffith has literally reached god status, the first thing he does is take advantage of her. And this makes it the most tragic event in the entire story. Because not only is Casca horribly raped, but it is by the very man she looked up to and always wanted to be with romantically. This goes beyond almost any other scenario where this could happen. I'm certainly not discrediting Guts' rape, but Donovan was a piece of shit from the get-go. Griffith, to Casca at least, was a hero. And that makes it absolutely horrific. And I can at least understand why people would say that it is shock value. Not to mention, moving forward, we pretty much lose Casca as we know her, and that breaks my heart the most because I absolutely adore her as a character. But it really hits home. They do a shot of this in the movie versions of the Golden Age arc, where it's about to happen, and Casca looks up to see Griffith, and for a second she imagines him as he used to look. Just that juxtaposition between someone who's her hero, who she would have gladly had sex with 1,000,000 times over, but never gave her the time of day, and now that he is this godlike creature, he completely takes advantage of her. So finally, let's look at this whole situation from Guts' perspective. Here we have a man that again has dealt with the trauma of sexual assault at a young age. He grew up distant and with a phobia of being touched, and slowly he opened himself up to this woman named Casca. He cried in front of her, broke down, and admitted the past mistakes that he's made. She became his sword, a sense of comfort and passion, someone he wanted to run away with. So all the development Guts has had at this point, getting over being betrayed by his father figure Gambino, who sold him out to be raped by Donovan, is now watching another betrayal by yet another person he loved and respected, Griffith, who Guts had just saved from torture, who inspired Guts to try to find his own purpose in life, who introduced Guts into a group of people he could truly call his family. Griffith, who is now raping the girl Guts loves, and the only person he has ever truly been able to open up to since his own childhood trauma. And here is why I say that the characters make this more than just shock value. This event, horrible as it is, would not have as much meaning as I just described were it just shock value. The reason this scene is such a big deal, why it is so iconic, why it is the single event in which the entire rest of the story is dependent on, is because of what we watched all three of these characters go through up until this point. Rape is a horrible thing, and if we just see rape in a piece of fiction, our instinct is obviously to say that this is bad. But when it's done after all of these stories of all of these individual characters have been built, it becomes a shattering, cataclysmic event that changes the structure of everything we knew and everything we will know going forward. We are not supposed to like this moment. It is not supposed to be cool. It is supposed to make us go berserk. And Guts tries viciously to get to Casca during this whole event. Only using the sword he picked up, he tries to slash at the demon, biting down his arm, but the sword breaks. So then he uses the busted sword to cut off his own goddamn arm and get to her. And it's been so long since the Black Swordsman arc, maybe you forgot Guts was missing an arm. Well, now you remember. He charges forward with the broken sword, blood flying out of his broken arm, trying to kill Griffith, but he is pinned down by several other demons. Casca pants, telling him not to look, begging him not to look, but Guts does. His eyes are viciously focused on Griffith, unable to look away, and Griffith's eyes are dead set looking at Guts the entire time. While holding his head in place, one of the Apostle's talons digs itself right into Guts' right eye, poking it out of existence. The last thing Guts sees with that eye is the horrible image in front of him. And after an excruciating amount of time, Griffith tosses Casca down, finished with his deed, and Guts screams out in pure rage and agony. So we reach the end of the most depressing, rage-inducing, and controversial moments in Berserk. And if you watch the 25-episode anime series adaptation, it ends right here. Yeah, not even a slight hit of what's going to happen next. It just leaves you with Guts screaming out. Can you believe that? That they would actually end it that way? Anyways, that's all for now, guys. So, thanks for watching.